Hello, welcome to Unity. This one is the base of all your visual communication. This is the key principle, and it's also the most abstract. This probably contains the most difficult concepts at first, but over the course of the semester, I'm confident that you'll have a pretty good idea of what this is all about. Unity is just basically it's just about your designs working as an overall whole. The visual elements in your design are working together to create an aesthetically pleasing image, and it means that your elements are not working against each other. It means that, for example, let's say you were to make a CD design, and the front cover looks like Garth Brooks and the back cover looks like Metallica. That's not a unified composition. You want the CD to be looking like it's from the same group and, even on the same album. And when you're talking, for example, let's say you've got a communication class. Let's pretend you took speech instead of communication. One day your professor's talking about verbiage and how to have a thesis and a body and a conclusion and things like that. And the next day he's trying to teach you about how to do basket weaving and how to tie fly hooks and go fishing. That's not a unified class. I don't know if you've ever had professors like that. Hopefully not. But the message is kind of all over the place. So Unity kind of comes in a lot of different flavors. Visual Unity, every element on in the image works together. It's combining to create a pleasing whole. Harmony is more or less a synonym for unity. That's kind of a simplified explanation. What is unity? A single image or design can be unified by harmonizing its elements. Communications package that might be deployed by a corporation or filmmaker can and must be unified across media, such as web, print, TV, and film. So you don't want your TV ads looking like it's the Green Lantern, and then your print ads look like you're making a dramedy, and then when you go to see the film you find out it's a horror film. That's bad news bears. That's bad marketing. You want a unified message. In English, there's a big difference between nothing wrong and everything right with the design. Those are two very different statements. Another way to put it, hopefully simply, it's unified not when nothing new can be added to, but when nothing else can be removed from a design. If you took anything else out, it would be no longer telling the story you want it to tell. And probably the most common one that I hear, that you've probably heard, is that it works. If it works, then probably it's unified. So, by the way, the examples you're seeing are just sort of generic unity. The examples of unity just are basically going to be any nice image. Any good-looking image is going to be a unified image, more or less. So that one is a little bit open to interpretation, but I'll talk a little bit more about these examples as we go on. But they're intended to just show you a little bit of a visual. So how do we unify our composition? Well, here's the easiest ways to do it. Proximity is going to unify your composition by placing the elements close to one another. So obviously in the example here we got the Blue Angels and they fly pretty close together. So there's your proximity. Repetition is using the same elements over and over again in a composition. So when you're looking at a keyboard, a computer keyboard, and this one's starting to look a little dated these days, but when you're looking at a computer keyboard, obviously the same elements, they're a little different, but visually speaking, they become basically the same elements. So even though each key is a little different. Similarity, this is another way to unify. That's a good, easy way to unify your compositions. using elements that are similar. Think of that like visual synonyms. So in this Chicago cityscape here, by the north side, the cityscape is obviously, the buildings aren't all identical, but they look very similar. It's the Chicago style around the north side there. Containment. Basically, very simply put, just putting an element in a container or putting an element in a frame. That's going to create a relationship with the boundaries of the container and the elements within it. Things are going to happen there. So, for example, another Chicago. I was zoomed in a lot. I'm not about to get run over. I'm not crazy or anything. So, but yeah, this is obviously under the L, and the pillars for the L provide a frame for these car subjects and those people walking in the background. So, how do you unify by moderately difficult methods? Let's find out. Theme. Now, theme is a little bit different. Now, theme is not a mechanical type of unity. Theme is thematically related content. Theme has an idea that connects all the content. It's basically, like I said, doesn't necessarily require any particular mechanics. So something could look one way visually and something else could be a completely different kind of visual. Theme is a little hard to pin down because it can be a lot of things. But let me show you an example of a theme. This is a type of thematic unity. And try to think if you can figure out the theme here. We're doing this bar trivia style. Did you guess it yet? What is the running theme? The answer will come up in just a second here. There you go. So this is a thematic unity. This is not unified by any particular visual style. It's not unified by a color scheme. It's not unified by any particular way of composing. As you can see, every shot is very, very different. The unity is in the theme on this one. So that makes thematic unity a little bit special, a little bit different than the rest. So if you want to watch this video in the whole, you can link to it from the content section under web resources. Continuation is sort of a tricky one too, but it's the use of a line, concrete or implied, leading the viewer's eye, basically. Continuation is one of a few Unity concepts that is a play on brain psychology. The human mind wants to look at an image and it wants it to be complete. The human mind is going to try to complete the image. So if you kind of give it a path to follow, your mind just wants to follow that path, and that can be of use to a visual designer. So use of line. Grids, pretty straightforward. Grids are just a structure where we put things together in with horizontal and vertical guides, boxes and lines, serving as a framework to organize the elements. Very, very common in web design. In fact, a necessity in web design. It's just the way web design is. Also pretty common in your informational type of visual designs like you see here. Continuity. So not to be confused with continuation. Continuity is the creation of a progression or a pattern. Something the viewer's eye wants to follow and continue. It's going to, basically in your mind, you're going to kind of extend it beyond what can be seen and just kind of keep going into its either infinity or wherever it seems to your mind that it should end. So this is a progression versus continuation where your eye is just kind of following a line. Continuation is very, very easy to do with a character who is either pointing or looking at something, and your eye is going to follow that line. Continuity is sort of a progression, it's a pattern, and your mind tries to fill in the rest, and it tries to go beyond the edge of that pattern where it ends. Closure happens when you create an incomplete but recognizable form which the viewer will see as complete. So this is an example of essentially the Pac-Man ghost. It's not exactly, they kind of repurposed it a little bit, but that's basically what it is. So if you have a unified composition, if you've successfully unified your composition, you will be shooting for these goals. Harmony. A harmonized composition is a composition which combines elements to create a pleasing and consistent picture. I've used that word too many times. This is another shot from the north side of Chicago, out on a pier by the lake. Only thing that makes this a good example of harmony is just that it looks good. I mean, it could be any image in the world that looks good. That's a good example of harmony. But think about how the elements of this image work together to make it pleasing and make it consistent. Harmony, again, is basically a synonym for unity. Gestalt or I don't know, I've heard a couple other pronunciations, just depends on who you ask. This is a tricky one for students to nail down. I think most of you have heard it, but you're going to find that when you start trying to talk about how it applies to your work, it becomes kind of tough, and I understand that. I still want you to try. But Gestalt is basically the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. How is the whole greater than the sum of its parts on your work? This visual example is the classic Gestalt. I imagine probably some of you have seen this. It's basically, when you look at this image, you're going to see either an old woman or a young lady. And it's just an interesting little piece. Whichever of the two that you see, try to see the other one. It just is an interesting, fun little thing to play with. So when I first looked at this when I was in art school, I don't remember if I was, 18 or 19 maybe, I was seeing the old lady first, and now I can see both pretty easily. It took me a few minutes to see the young woman, but anyway, that's a fun little Gestalt image. It's one of the classics. So, thank you very much.